Howdy, howdy. Welcome, everyone. Day 2. Hope everyone had their Barocca this morning. I'd like to start off with an acknowledgement of country. I respectfully acknowledge the people of the Yugambeh language region, the traditional owners of this land on which we meet, and pay my respect to their elders past, present, and emerging. I would particularly like to acknowledge my wife and her family, who are descendants of this land, and thank them for all they have taught me about their culture, and also extend my respect to any First Nations people here today. Just a brief about me. I'm the head of corporate security at Seek. My name's Lucas. I'll be the MC for this stream today. I'm also one of the organisers of B-Sides Melbourne and one of the organisers for TUSCON, which is the Sunshine Coast's premier conference. Say that very loosely. Just a reminder, there is a Q&A app, so if you haven't downloaded it already, please do. It just allows you to kind of ask questions throughout the presentation as well. I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll forget what my question was earlier in the presentation, and then I'll have to ask the person later on. So it's going to be used for Q&A, but if you do have any questions throughout in the room, I'm going to be roaming around with a handheld mic. Please wait for me to come to you in order to ask the question, just so the people tuning in on a live stream can actually hear you as well. We've all seen those YouTube clips where you don't hear the question, you hear the answer, and you have zero context. So with all that aside, I'd like to introduce Bex Nitert, talking through the illicit economy and outsourced crime providers. So Bex is a director of digital forensics and incident response team at Paraflare, where she delivers digital forensic investigation, incident response, threat hunting, and cybersecurity consulting services to clients in the public and private sector. Can we give a very warm round of applause for Bex?
Thank you so much. Now is this thing working? Yes, I think it is. Awesome. So crime, cybercrime, something I've been into for quite a long time now, and was what got me interested in doing digital forensics in the first place. Kind of started off with credit card fraud, got interested in that, then workplace misconduct, finally found a university course that I liked, and cybercrime became a real thing, and so that's what I dig. So about me, you already heard about me. I'm also the Perth chapter lead of the Australian Women in Security Network. There's another 3 chapter leads over there as well. So very passionate about supporting women in security. So if you haven't heard about it and you're interested in joining the security industry, it's an Australian-wide organisation. Encourage you to join. They also love sponsors. I'll plug them, please support them. Euphemisms. Criminals use them quite a lot to try to kind of downplay the badness in what they do, and I'm using one here. I don't stalk cybercriminals, I spur them. Because, stalking is such a weird thing, right? So I don't want to be a stalker because that's just weird. And talking about weird, I'm also really not crazy, digging holes in my backyard. I felt like I had to actually include these slides because the people at the digital forensics tutorial that we did on Tuesday kind of missed out on a bit of the context of most of the talks that I do. I include this because it does provide a good analogy of the work that I do. I don't dig holes in my backyard without a purpose. Well, maybe I do, but it's a good way of getting away from the computer, but typically there's something I want to achieve. Maybe there's a dead patch in the grass and I think, maybe there's something causing that dead patch, so I start digging. And I start finding random stuff in my backyard, including bones, as you can see there, some bricks, clothing, wallets, Luke Skywalker, that Muppet thing that I can't remember the name of. Also find really cool stuff. And this is a cricket trophy from the 1930s. Still can't work out what cricket club it's from, but this is kind of my day job as well. You know, I find a lot of crap when I'm digging around people's computers, but I also find a lot of really interesting things as well, and a lot of things that are really cool, but you don't know how it got there or, you know, necessarily what it is because you don't have the context around it. But that's what you know, makes my job really interesting. So constantly, you know, seeking out things and finding things and trying to work out what they are, and sometimes you don't have the answers, but that's okay. It will just drive you insane for years like this thing has. So, what am I doing? What have I been doing for probably way too long now? Not stalking a cybercriminal. It's not what I'm doing at all. We had a client that came to us after a phishing incident, and it was a chained attack. So one employee actually got phished via their personal email account, but they put in their business email credentials, which resulted in their business email account being taken over. Their account was then used to proliferate you know, more phishing emails within the organisation. Wasn't over the top, you know, maybe a quarter of the organisation at that stage, but got more accounts compromised. And this is a very common theme with phishing emails. Unfortunately, not many organisations actually take the time to investigate at this stage. It's not until, you know, somebody's transferred money to the wrong account, or there's been a ransomware attack, or, you know, something else has gone wrong, that they actually bring people in to investigate. There was one instance where, in a similar attack, there was about 20% of the organisation's user accounts were compromised within 12 hours. It actually would have been less if there wasn't that gap where people were sleeping, I think. So 20% of the user accounts were compromised, and their IT service provider only picked up 60% of those compromised accounts. A year later, they discovered that there were auto-forwarding rules, kind of pushing out all of these emails. No idea whether that was the phishing incident that caused it. There were so many, but you know, it kind of goes to show that if you don't actually follow through and investigate phishing incidents properly, a lot can slip through the cracks, and some of the, I guess, techniques have evolved over the years as well, and the phishing actor that I'll be talking about today has been using that a lot to compromise organisations. So, OPSEC is always amazing with criminals, isn't it? They never publish anything online about what they're doing, who they are, what they're eating for dinner, nothing like that. So the organisation that engaged us to investigate after they'd had the phishing incident, through information sharing within the information security community, I knew what cluster of activity this phishing attack had originated from. So, you know, I already had a bit of background knowledge on, you know, how they operated and what you can expect, and they heavily abuse cloud services. So if they compromise your Office 365 credentials, they're likely going to upload things like PDFs or .url files to Onedrive to use as URLs in further phishing attacks. So already had a fairly good idea about the way that they operated, but towards the end of the engagement, the legal firm that had engaged us said, could you look into them a bit more? Can you tell us their motivations and, you know, about what they might do with information if they got it, you know, what are their intentions? And so I started digging, and I found a lot more than I expected. I found the guy's real name, his address, you know, it's just all out there, and it's definitely more than 10 years worth of illicit activity online now. So phishing isn't necessarily a sexy topic, ransomware is the thing, but phishing leads to a lot of, the most high impact types of, cybercrime that we experience. Business email compromise, romance scams, property scams. It's, initial access brokers commonly sell stolen credentials onto ransomware gangs. So by not taking phishing seriously, we're hurting individuals, we're hurting companies, we're hurting national security overall. So we really need to take it seriously. And unfortunately, there are people out there that are making phishing very easy for people to do. In fact, you can outsource phishing to them. So the particular actor that I'm looking at, he actually runs an outsourced phishing operation. He not only allows you to buy templates for various types of phishing sites, which will be used for various reasons. If you're phishing for dating sites, you're probably going to be undertaking romance scams. If you're phishing for real estate related credentials, you're probably going to engage in some kind of either payment diversion fraud through settlement agents or property scams. And of course, quite obviously, Office 365 and other business-related credentials, you're going to want to be getting access to companies' data. So this is the trajectory of basically the phishing actor's, career progression. It's, started getting interested in cybercrime when I was, getting pretty damn interested in cybersecurity. We've both travelled along the way and moved up in the world and, having great success. He does get paid a lot more than me though. So in 2015, that's when the first evidence I could find of him actually starting to market his services online on underground criminal forums, essentially saying, hey, you can purchase a phishing page from me, or a letter, which is the kind of email that would get sent through. Again, another euphemism. It's not a phishing email, it's a letter. I don't know why they bother, seriously. So he was actually working at a internet cafe at the time, had been employed. It's not like, there were, unemployment issues. He admitted to actually committing his first, cyber attack when he was working at an internet cafe against one of their customers. And he was socialising with a lot of cyber criminals as well. Massive group, all engaged in various types of cybercrime, so whether it was scams, denial of service attacks, hacktivism, that kind of thing. So, it was just this big social thing where everyone was just encouraging this behaviour, and he, was quite outgoing, active on these forums, helping people out, marketing himself, being a, pretty reasonable guy. If he wasn't involved in crime, you'd probably be like, yeah, he's a cool dude, let's hang out at the bar, and, he's actually pretty shit at, coding and stuff, but anyway, as long as you can fake it till you make it, I guess. So he set up an e-commerce site on, normal web, Google accessible, 2018. Has remained up. It's just there. Search for it, find it, buy some phishing templates. He then expanded into providing essentially a managed service. So you could pay him It's getting close to $2,000 US a month now to do the phishing for you. So he'll have the template, he'll have the websites, he'll send the emails, he'll collect the cred logs, and he'll send them through to you at the end of the week. Don't know what he does during that week, but anyways, might be used. Probably double dips a bit. But yeah, he makes a decent amount of money, and over time he's employed people. He's got an accountant, hired a freelancer, hired developers. He's got people to help doing with tech support, and it's run like a legitimate business. He's introduced automation so that if phishing links go down, you can just log into a portal, click a button, it refreshes, spins up new phishing sites automatically, and then you just go and send out more phishing emails. It's just fabulous. It's just, I don't know, they do it better than some businesses, so doing really well. So, I don't know why, but he issues invoices to customers for the illicit services that he provides. Has also used Pastebin as some kind of, record keeping kind of thing. I don't know, it's like, use Excel, dude. It'll at least make it easier for me to just calculate everything that he's doing rather than having to put everything in Excel and, have it all standardized. But this data is from end of December, January, February. I collected last year. Quite a significant amount of money, and you can see that most of his income is actually coming through the managed phishing services. So a decent amount of criminals are paying him to do the work for him. I'm not entirely sure whether he's actually, doing individual things for each customer. I'm pretty sure he just sends all the same logs to all of the customers, and it's a pretty decent deal for him, and I don't know, they seem to trust him, I guess. They keep paying him. But through the introduction of his managed service, his income has just skyrocketed because, for the same period the year before, it was 10% of that. So he's just shot off, absolutely. So the really great thing with him is, so in the invoices that were published to online file sharing company that I happened to stumble across, he's got, the name of the customer, not necessarily the real name, but an alias. The amount that they spent, if they used Bitcoin, it's got Bitcoin transaction ID and the address that it's gone to, which is really handy. And, that was super useful. And in the more recent transactions that occurred last year, he's got the ICQ numbers or aliases, Skype aliases, Telegram aliases, the email accounts where the credential logs are sent to the Bitcoin transaction IDs. If they paid in perfect money, then what their perfect money account was. It's just like, holy moly. And put it all together, I've got hundreds of customers with their email addresses, and it's just insane. And so through the information that he's published, I've got several Bitcoin addresses which you can cluster into what you can think is probably going to be the same wallet. The kind of big cluster up the top where you've got a lot of the blue lines, that was a single address that was used between 2015 and 2018, and at that point in time, So the blue lines are essentially where the money's flowing out. So you can see that, he's kind of buying lots of things with Bitcoin at that stage. Bitcoin's fairly low value, so, let's go buy a pizza or whatever, and I don't know, something like that, I assume. But he does purchase a lot of things with Bitcoin, including other illicit services and his hosting and things like that. But the ones down the bottom are all from basically last year. I haven't done too much in this last 12 months, but he's just released so much information. It's amazing. And through the information that he has disclosed, I've discovered that if you have an MD5 hash of the email account that he's associated with a purchase, you can often link that to a particular phishing page for those customers that aren't actually managed. They haven't bought that managed service, they've just bought the phishing page that he hosts and kindly has that automated regeneration of link things. So there's actually a way to link particular phishing campaigns to particular actors. And some of these actors have been using the same emails for many years. It's quite amazing. So can you imagine how much evidence there would be there? So this guy has about 10,000 registered users in his newly revamped shop. So in about a year, he's got 10,000 users. Some of them are going to be law enforcement and people gathering intel and security companies and things like that, keeping an eye on what's happening as he starts to expand his services. May as well just stay there because it's a pretty picture. I like telling stories about him, he's pretty cool. This year he's actually expanded into SMS phishing. So he now provides the infrastructure to do SMS phishing, which is pretty cool. Well, for his customers anyway, maybe not for us. I haven't seen any of the SMS phishing coming through in Australia, but who knows? But when I do, I'll be like, whew, happy days. Kind of, I just get excited over things I shouldn't be excited about. I think I'm going all right for time. Yeah? Cool. So I did say that I was going to talk about what we can do about cybercrime. What do we do? Cybercrime is such a huge area. One of the concerns that I have about operations like this guy's is that it's actually making it really easy for kids to get involved. So some of his customers are children, and that is quite disturbing for me. And we see that children are involved quite a bit in cybercrime. We've got Lapsus, which Brett spoke about yesterday. But one of his highest paying customers is actually 15 years old. So he's getting to that stage now where he's actually, starting to accumulate enough wealth where, he can afford, a place to rent in Sydney and, doesn't have a real job, but, and everyone else is struggling. It's kind of disturbing, and it's difficult for law enforcement to crack down on these things. There's so many operations happening and so many different competing priorities, and even if you can give them all the information in the world, things take time. I don't know how to solve that problem. Wish I did, but one of the things that I would really like to see industry do is start to share more information on these things, and particularly reporting when they are being impacted, because it would be less than 1 in 5 victims of cybercrime that are actually reporting that they have been a victim. If you're not reporting that you've been a victim, cases become a lower priority. We don't understand what's going on. We, don't have that data to go on to actually quantify what harm criminals are, causing to us. So it's really important that we actually start talking about it. Like, it's okay, it happens, all right? Like, we've got you, we care about you, please share. I know that's easier said than done, but if we don't start sharing this information and we keep all of this crime kind of hidden under the rug, it's kind of like, domestic violence, if people aren't talking about it, there's nothing we can do about it. So, it's a stigma that we need to remove if we're actually going to, really get ahead of it. Obviously, MFA, come on guys, seriously. I think Microsoft released a report saying that only 20% of organisations have adopted it, and it's been around for so long. Why? We're doing rethink, reskill, reboot, but there's all this stuff. That's just the basics that people still aren't doing, and MFA will protect against so many of these attacks, and it's just, please. But there is one practical thing that I do want to show, because it's something that I see people kind of fail to take into account and probably don't do every day if they're investigating security incidents. So does anyone know of URL scan? A few people. So urlscan.io. Let's see if I can. All right. So you can see that. I'm just going to refresh because I did this last night. See if it works. Of course, it's going to come up with some that probably don't work. But as I was saying, when these phishing attacks occur, they quite often exploit your own infrastructure to, conduct further phishing attacks. So say I have, oh dear, look, we've got a Swinburne one. Should I click it? Yeah. This one probably won't work actually based on the way that it's looking. Sorry, the link has expired. I wasn't expecting an Australian company. We've got a New Zealand company though. Here we go. All right, cool. So this is the result of a phishing attack. That view proposal document there that's hosted in OneNote will contain a link to a site to steal credentials. So if you're investigating a phishing attack in your organisation, how many of you look to see whether files have been uploaded to the compromised user's OneDrive, OneNote, anything that they have access to? Not enough. I'm saying that now because I come across this so often, and I'll call up the companies, local governments, and say, hey, you've got phishing lures hosted on your infrastructure. You've been phished. Oh yeah, that happened a week ago. I'm like, okay, well, it's still there. Can you do something about it? They're like, oh, but, it's okay. We're not the first and we won't be the last. I'm like, no. Please. It's really hard to get people to listen to you when you're trying to help. You're just like, can you just please take this down? I don't know if they think you're trying to scam them or sell them something. It doesn't help that I work for a cybersecurity company, I guess. But, trying to do the right thing, because the longer these things stay online, the more people that will get phished. So this example, unfortunately, the way that Microsoft kind of structures their pages, it makes it very difficult for services like URL Scan to directly pull the links from the documents. So So this is another one. Go back to the summary. So if you know your mysharepoint.com URL domain, I would strongly suggest that you regularly search for this in services like URL scan. Not only might you pick up instances where you have phishing lures hosted there, but you also might find that there's actually some leaked data. So someone might not have appropriate sharing permissions and someone's just gone and scanned it in URL scan, and then suddenly you've got a list of documents and people know what link that they can go to then access some files. There's actually a link on there that I won't go to, but it looks like a data room for some kind of probably M&A deal. Maybe not something the lawyers will be impressed with. So anyways, this one here is pretty crap, but you know, some are pretty decent. But thankfully, in this case, under links, you can see that it's pulled out the links from the phishing lure that's been hosted in Onedrive. I know because I clicked earlier, prepared earlier, that this one no longer works when it was scanned initially in URL scan, but this bottom one does. And we've got another phishing thing here, right? So sign up with Office 365 or other email. They like to make these multi-purpose so that if you don't have Office 365, well, we can just get what other credentials you've got. That's cool. We'll take what we can get. So this is, you know, similar to the actor that I'm talking about. They all kind of copy each other's stuff. It gets reused. It's just, you know, they do have patterns though. So even if things look the same, they're generally not. But another good thing, depending on the page, if you click on the DOM, see some funky source code. If it'll load. I think I did prepare it earlier as well though, just in case. So depending on how they've set it up, this is, can everyone see that? All right. So that's where the credentials will get posted to, right? You'll find that quite often across multiple phishing pages, there'll be the same domain and PHP file that credentials are posted to. So if you're trying to kind of block a spray and pray campaign that is just blasting you with all of these unique URLs for phishing pages, you know, blocking each one of those isn't very efficient. If you take that extra step to go through and find where the credentials actually go to and block traffic with that, you know, so I don't know who legitimately uses DuckDNS, but you know, you could at least block that. The credentials won't make it to the criminal. So, you know, if this same criminal is spraying hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of employees in your organisation, and all of the credentials are being sent to that one URL, the PHP file, which generally has a mailing script that will, you know, email off, that saves a lot of time. Take that little bit extra effort. You know, there's a lot of things that you can do to really make security easier for you. And I do find that people aren't taking the extra time. Maybe it's SLAs or KPIs, but you know, look for those lures and files. Certainly make use of URL scan. If you provide a service that allows people to host content on your, you know, website or whatever for free, also make use of URL scan because your service is probably being abused as well. So you can actually, it's like this crowdsourced kind of, you know, threat feed. Oh, cool, we're hosting phishing pages, maybe we should take them down. And I'll leave it there. No, I'll leave it there. I will put my thank you page up though, because you can't end without a thank you page.
Thank you very much, Bex. A round of applause, everyone. There are a few questions online, so thank you everyone for submitting it through the app. But I will run around, so I want to get my steps up today as well. So I'll go from first to last. So was it difficult to identify the offender's real name, or was it in the Whois record?
Whois.
Brilliant.
Mm-hmm. I've got his WhatsApp number too if you want to give him a call.
Would like to know more about what open source tools that can be used to do these investigations.
Well, there's many. URL scan's my favorite because it tends to actually have quite a lot of, there's many APIs hooked into URL scan. So if you're feeding malicious URLs into other sandbox environments, it's typically getting pushed to URL scan. So it's pretty good actual centralized repository, but you can search. There's Hatching Triage, Joe Sandbox, Anyone. It's just hybrid analysis. There's so many. And I've been using all of these services to go back in time and look at phishing pages back 2017. It's just full of stuff. There's so many things out there, so probably carry on forever about that.
The next question is, has this person been prosecuted?
No. Hopefully sometime soon.
And the next one is there a way we can get Microsoft to be more responsive to OneDrive takedowns?
I would love that. I would also really love there to be some kind of free malware scanning, especially for individual users. Sorry, Microsoft, but you're really terrible.
The final question online is, will urlscan.io DOM display encoded URL content as well?
Will it be encoded?
Will it display encoded URL/content?
Yes. So sometimes it will be encoded, and you'll need to do the work to decode it. It depends how the browser's going to render it. So if I went back to that page, you could see that there's all of this, encoded JavaScript stuff. You'd need to take some effort to decode that, but for the most part, they don't put much effort into, encoding things. They think it's encrypted because it's, base 64, and it's like, okay, but anyway.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I think we're all familiar with that. Any questions around the room? I have a question. Do you want to hear a terrible joke?
I do.
Excellent.
No?
How did the cybercriminal get away from the scene of the crime?
How?
They ransomware. Can we give a warm round of applause for Bex and no applause for me?